Recently, there was a story that Kodak had temporarily stopped all film production. And while that may seem like a spooky headline at first, it turned out to be rather good news. But today, we have an update on that story and a little more information about what was done. Let's get into it. The original story came from a statement that was put out by Jim Continenza, the CEO of Kodak presently. He said, "Our film sales have increased on motion picture and in still film and other films. So on film, we're doing a shutdown in November, total shutdown. We've continued to invest our manufacturing process." And so that was the backstory. But the additional details and the update on the story comes from Rochester First. Let's take a look at that. The particular shutdown was planned over a year ago. He said additional equipment had to be purchased and the construction teams had to be put in place. He said that the film sensitizing upgrades are just one of the improvements. Other investments included the base we make for the film, the chemical manufacturing, the film finishing area, and the film sensitizing. Sounds like a pretty involved and thorough reworking, touching on many of the steps in the process. Chief Technical Officer Tabor went on to say this. He said that these production capacity upgrades had to happen as demand was increasing. More commercial and Hollywood productions use motion picture film, but Tabor said consumer demand had doubled in the past 5 years. And I mean, that's obvious if you've been watching this channel. Film processes have been exploding. You can look at the Google Trends and see searches for film cameras and 35mm film. All those search terms are increasing. I mean, take a look at the channels like mine. They're growing at a rapid pace. I think it goes without saying at this point that film photography's footprint has been expanding in the past few years. And Tabor went on to list a number of areas where they're seeing that demand increase. He said in consumer film specifically, 35mm cameras, their own Super 8 movie film, and if you didn't know, they've got a really expensive Super 8 camera that they put out a few years ago. If memory serves, it's a couple $1,000s, but they also cited specifically demand for disposable cameras. Tabor said this, referencing previous reporting, that it's being driven in their analysis. We're seeing similar things. By one, the use of one-time cameras by millennials and Gen X, and particularly at events or when they want control of the pictures. We will continue to produce film, invest in film, and in making films as long as there's consumer and motion picture demand, which obviously there is, and it's growing. All that pretty good news. It states that basically Kodak is seeing what we're seeing and that, demand for film is increasing. They better get with the times, upgrade their factories, and be able to meet the demand. And this is on the back of a story from just a few years ago where we saw that Kodak was hiring people like crazy. After Kodak falling off a cliff for the better part of a decade, that type of increase in demand, 50% increase in workforce in 3 years, is pretty darn huge. So Kodak at this point is significantly investing in film production, and it looks like they're ramping things up as we go into the new year. So what broad takeaways are there from this story? Well, I think that there's no other way to see it but that it's good news, right? Kodak is seeing the same things we are. Demand for film is increasing, and they need to rise to the occasion and continue to be able to produce film stocks. That way we're not having the shortages that we occasionally see. If you've been following the analog photography market over the past couple of years, it's not hard to have found times where Kodak's films haven't always been available. For one reason or the other, they were out of stock. Kodak was not able to meet the production demand. Kodak simply wasn't able to keep enough film on the shelves for photographers to meet the demand. One potentially negative thing, and maybe I'm just nitpicking here, is there isn't really any indication from any of these stories from Continenza or Tabor Kodak is going to release new film stocks anytime soon. There's nothing about these upgrades which say, hey, we're doing these upgrades because it'll allow us to make new and exciting film products in the future. The way they make it sound is that they're only trying to meet demand with the products that they already have. But at the same time, I understand why would Kodak announce something like that they're working on new film stocks in a press release? I don't know. With Kodak already having a hard time meeting the demand of photographers, it seems at this point they've got all the demand they need without trying to get people on a fuss about potentially new film stocks coming in the future. There was one little hope that I had in the back of my mind, and it was that maybe these upgrades would open the door for the potential return of some of the film stocks that we've talked about coming back from the past, right? We've talked a lot about Aerochrome, we've talked a lot about Kodachrome, and there's huge structural problems with bringing both of those back. You don't need to list them in the comments unless you just want to. But specifically with Aerochrome, part of the production issue there was from an interview with Robert Shainbrook. Shainbrook said that all films, after coating and sensitizing, are scanned with an infrared laser. And this laser would fog infrared film, which would render the production of Aerochrome impossible. Like, they just couldn't do it. Perhaps they'd done something about this infrared laser. I don't know. That would be something interesting to know about these upgrades, is did they do anything about that infrared laser, or is it still involved in the process? Because that would potentially open the door for Aerochrome to return in the event that that step in the process was somehow removed. And as much as many of us would love to see Kodachrome come back too, Kodachrome would also represent its own share of troubles. much has been made about the difficulty with developing Kodachrome. If Kodak were to try to bring back Kodachrome in some form, it would also probably mean that Kodak would have to get back in the development game as well, so that would be a whole other can of worms. But let me know in the comments, are there any other film stocks from Kodak's past that you would like to see them bring back? What do you make of these developments? Are you excited that Kodak has expanded their capacity? Anyway, let me know. And one more thing before we go, a special shout out to the channel Studio 41, who provided awesome footage of the insides of Kodak's factories that I've used in recent videos. Those are really good videos that show you kind of what goes on behind the scenes, and if you want more information about any of that, that's a great place to look. But as always, guys, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.